Well, just before we're coming on air, we were just having a quick chat to me and Mr Ashford, saying hopefully this is an end of an era, and only mean that in the sense of doing it via Zoom, Mr Ashford. It's been some time, and it's never good, is it? If we're not in person, that means we've got the lockdown, but literally from tomorrow, the Isle of Man returns to normal, and maybe that's where we should start my interview with you. I mean, it looked like it wasn't going to happen quite like that. There was definitely the indication that you may hold things back. I did ask that question on the Friday briefing, Thursday briefing where it was. But anything more you want to add on that? You know, because it's not all by science, is it? You have to read it and react to what you see.
We do. I mean, it's very much a feeling as you go along process, particularly with the virus. We're confident that we can go back to what we would term normal tomorrow. I'd like to say again, it's been down to the public and the way they've reacted again. It's been exceptionally difficult, this lockdown, and I think we have to accept that. It's been a lot more difficult, and people I've been speaking to, they found it a lot harder than they have the previous two occasions, because this is the third time we've been through this now. So now we need to really start moving to the mitigation phase and learning to live with the virus. And I think the way the public has reacted in being able to get cases down, the way our vaccination programme is now rolling out, it gives us a chance to pivot from elimination to mitigation from this point on.
Can I push you on that then? I mean, we keep hearing this sort of change of attitude now that's going on. Rightly so, obviously, because I think we all understand we've got to live with it. How do you see it playing out, though?
Well, I mean, I think it's about putting power back into people's hands. So we are going to see cases of COVID, more cases of COVID on the island at various points. I mean, this is a virus that isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to be around for probably decades, if not even longer to come. And we have to learn to live with it. And although we may come forward with measures, unless there is the issue of the hospital getting overwhelmed or our health and care services being impacted, we will be actually advising the public to take various measures. And it's about trusting people to do the right thing going forward.
And that's a trigger point, isn't it? The hospital getting overwhelmed. Is that where your meter starts to hit danger levels and, in future?
It is. I mean, we've got to remember, and again, Paul, I go back to 12 months ago, which again feels like a lifetime ago from a lot of people. But our two key measures were the preservation of life and also ensuring that our health service weren't overwhelmed. Preservation of life, we've done what we can for the vulnerable with the vaccination programme, and in terms of the hospital, the vaccination is very encouraging in the fact that it doesn't seem to make people seriously ill. We're now down to the 30s age range, where again, based on age ranges, the virus doesn't seem to have the same effect. So going forward, we just need to now have a bit of a culture shift in the way that we treat the virus and the way we as a public react to it. We've very much built up a thing that COVID's something to fear, that we should be concerned if we get any cases. What we need to start doing now is building that sort of message around COVID is going to be something that's going to be there, and it will pop up from time to time, but how we tackle it will be very different going forward.
So will these cruise ships be coming in, the ones that are already booked to come in all summer long? Will that be something that we'll be looking forward to having? Likewise, of course, family and friends getting down a notch on the levels and that sort of thing. Any hope on the horizon you can give us today?
Well, the hope is that we will start releasing, but it's still got to be a slow process, because what we don't want to do is to get COVID just ripped through the entire society and us end up with those people in hospital, because even with vaccination, there is always a cohort of people who could become seriously ill. So we have to do it in a managed way, and we have to look at the infection rates coming down in other countries, such as our near neighbours in Ireland and the UK. The signs are very encouraging from both jurisdictions at the moment. The UK, I think, over the last 7 days has seen an 18% drop in cases. So it's not going to be a release overnight, but we now need to start moving back to some form of normality for our society and putting power back into people's hands. I mean, as a politician, I'm very sort of libertarian-minded, I suppose I would say. And what we've had to do over the last 12 months impacting on people's rights to choose, people's lives, has gone really against all my political instincts, the way we've had to deal with things. And I think going forward, we have to give people the power back in the way and government needs to step back from the way that we were, involving ourselves in people's lives.
Well, we hear about the traffic light system. Obviously, I'm presuming it's going to follow the UK, right? I mean, you're not going to have your own completely separate list of countries you can or can't go to?
No, I would hope we would mirror the UK. The traffic light system is still being built upon, so there's still a lot of decisions to be made in that area. But I think what we need to do is make things as simple as possible. Different jurisdictions have done different things. So, for instance, in Guernsey's case, they've looked at the regions such as England, Scotland, Wales. Jersey went all the way drilling down to local authority areas. I think 368 local authority areas in the UK. To my mind, that's a bit too minutiae, trying to say someone from Sefton is in red but someone in Liverpool isn't when it's a neighbouring local authority area. I don't think that works quite as well. So I'd hope we'd have a sensible system that people can understand going forward.
Now, we did have a roadmap. I mean, I think most people clearly thought it was a bit ambitious that time because the data was going in the wrong direction. I felt sorry for the civil servants who were paraded to talk about it when really it seemed like there was no really good substance to that. Now things have changed. So will we have this sort of roadmap, which of course can change, but to have some dates that people can aspire to taking a holiday, for instance?
Well, again, I think holidays maybe is the wrong phrase to use at the moment. I would still personally urge people that this year I don't necessarily think is the right time for people to be going off, because we have to look at this from a global perspective. There is other variants out there, variants potentially of concern, and equally, I think we do need to still be cautious. But what we need to do is start taking, again, to use my well done phrase for anyone doing word bingo, baby steps. Those cautious baby steps forward to getting back to normality. That includes the borders, people being able to travel. But we do still need to be cautious, because what we don't want to do is introduce something that sets us back to square one. So
we should take no notice of EasyJet having flights booked or other things showing up as being back on. I mean, that is just them taking a punt at it, is it?
Yeah, well, we went through this last year. If you remember, there was a big hullabaloo, if that's the word to use, probably about the same time, actually, last year, I think it was, where people said there was EasyJet, they could book in June, July, and people saw it as some great conspiracy theory that the Isle of Man government was in hock with the airlines and we were going to open up, and it didn't happen. So, what the airlines do is down to themselves. But, in terms of restrictions, we will take a cautious approach. The borders has been what's protected us to date. It's been one of our biggest defences as an island, and we do recognise we need to relax. We need to start allowing people back into the island, both from a personal point of view and also an economic point of view as well. But we need to do so bearing in mind that we also need to protect our health service and also the health of our population.
They're just pushing you slightly, dates, whatever, even if you change them, just have something down, like the UK did. They certainly had their roadmap laid out, and whatever's happened, it seems to have been kept to, but that's not the point. The fact is they did come up with dates.
Well, let's see what comes forward at Tynwald this week in terms of the exit strategy that the Chief Minister will be moving potentially on a supplementary order paper to Tynwald, and let's see what we can do. I'm always nervous about putting dates in, because even if you do something like the UK did, where they badged it as the earliest opportunity, people do get their hopes up around dates, and it doesn't matter how much badging you do to actually say, well, actually, if this happens, then X, Y, and Z can happen. People do get their hopes up. That means that is the date it will happen, and if that doesn't happen, a lot of people feel let down. What I think matters more is people can actually see the direction of travel that we're going in. Like I say, the vaccination programme has been very encouraging. Hopefully this coming week we will pass 60% of our population having been vaccinated, which will be a huge milestone. That's the overall population, not just adult population, but the overall population. And, the vaccine, as we're seeing in the UK and other countries that have got a huge rollout, such as Israel, it's having a massive impact.
And on this famous graph we keep seeing, the Isle of Man's only just behind Israel now.
We have moved forward exactly as we said we would. I know there was a lot of scepticism in the early days where I kept saying we would actually catch up and we would overtake the UK in terms of doses, and that we would actually, we're in the top 10 in the world. And I think for a small island, that's something to celebrate.
I did an interview with a gentleman the other day. He was looking forward to when things do get back, and he runs a guest house, and there's massive questions there. Like, if people come over when they can, and then they get ill, what on earth will happen? You've got to have all sorts of proposals ready for that, haven't you, to happen?
Well, we do with all illnesses, to be fair, in health and social care. It is quite possible for someone to come over to the island and naturally fall ill, and it does happen. That's why we have reciprocal health agreements with the UK, etc. So we have to deal with that day to day. COVID's no different. We deal with that. People come over on a holiday, tragically have strokes, heart attacks, and our health service has to pick that up. So it's no different to what we do day to day, and the fabulous work that all the workers across DHSC have been doing. I've always said, and we've discussed this in interviews in normal times, where I've said, I'm exceptionally proud to be Minister for Health and Social Care. I know sometimes it doesn't always get a good press, but the work that goes on and the dedication we have of staff is absolutely amazing, and I'm exceptionally proud to have the opportunity to be Minister for this department.
The vaccine issue, we expected this sort of shortage as such, and everything's happened like you said it would. Are we now coming out of that? Is the new ones coming online? Where are we up to?
Yeah, so we're still seeing disruption to the supply chain, as we said we would in April. Obviously, one of the impacts has been the change in the JCVI advice that those under 30 should be potentially offered an alternative if available. So under 30s can opt for Pfizer or Moderna rather than actually having the AstraZeneca. That will put further pressure on it because the levels of orders of Pfizer coming into the UK are a lot lower. AstraZeneca is the main bulk of the orders. So we need to work that through over the next couple of weeks and see where that is going.
Last week we were talking about your rebuttal to Dr. Rachel Glover's testimony, and you said that it was going to be delayed, because of Easter and that sort of thing. And we got through the whole week, and I think it only came out this weekend. It certainly wasn't a rebuttal, it wasn't a blow by blow, word by word, or accusation by accusation.
Right. Well, I was waiting for you to say that, Paul, and I'm surprised it's taken this long into the interview. I was expecting that to be the first question. But in terms of it, it's more of a statement. Now, the reason for that is the Public Accounts Committee has actually asked for an evidence session now with the department, and also asked for the department to submit evidence. Now, we need to be very careful when we're speaking to a parliamentary committee. I'm very much a traditionalist when it comes to parliamentary rules and process, and I don't believe we should be going out into public with anything we are going to say at the committee. I think what we say at the committee should be heard by the committee first. I'm a bit of a parliamentary traditionalist in that, so we were a bit limited in what we could go out with. So we went out with a statement instead because we want to keep our powder dry for what we say at the committee. And I'm sure it will be a very interesting hearing. And
this is on Monday you're going to be called?
No. Let's be clear. This is something completely different. Tomorrow is appearing before the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee. Myself, Dr. Allison as Minister for Education. That's our annual evidence session. The committee hearing for the PAC, I believe, is in May. But it is important with parliamentary committees that we actually don't do them a disservice and start having debates in public of stuff we are going to discuss at the committee. I personally see that as a contempt of Parliament.
But you're going to be asked things tomorrow. Well, you are giving some evidence, aren't you, to this other committee?
Around the third lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's a very defined topic.
Oh, so it won't stray off into that. We won't be hearing any more about this for a while. Then
that's two different committees. It doesn't move over the committee remits. But like I say, I'm very much a traditionalist when it comes to Parliament. I believe it shows contempt to a parliamentary committee if you start shoving out in public all the stuff before you've actually told the committee it.
Did you not know this before you made that statement that you were going to make a rebuttal?
No, well, at that time, there'd been no request from the Public Accounts Committee for us to give evidence. The evidence request, I think, came in early last week.
Are you still confident that it will be a line-by-line sort of rebuttal?
Yeah, I personally, I'm being called to give evidence, and I certainly will go through things point by point.
Okay, so this one tomorrow, anything going to be highlighted that we should be looking forward to, that we're going to be hearing any new information, or is this purely just asking you what you did during lockdown 3?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scrutiny committee, so I don't know the questions myself, Paul, so I haven't got a crystal ball to know what the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee is going to ask me or ask Dr. Allinson. We'll give evidence and see where the conversation takes us.
Okay, in our next section, I've got some questions. We'll deal with the vaccines again. But as we come out of this lockdown, is there any advice you want to pass on to people? I mean, technically we'll probably see a scene at 1 minute past midnight, a pub opening, that sort of thing. But for some people, it is a step too far, whatever's going to happen. And masks may be worn and feel free to wear them. And I know that will happen. But, what's your advice?
Yeah, well, the advice is that people need to make their own decisions about what's right for them, and people should respect other people's decisions. There will be people who will still want to social distance, who will still want to wear masks. And I think, in community settings, that's a perfectly sensible thing to be doing. In many cases, people have to make their own choices, and we need to respect people for those choices. So if you have someone who clearly wants to continue to social distance from people, then we should respect that, and we should respect their space. We have to still be cautious as a society. The virus is there. The vaccine rollout is going exceptionally well, but it takes time to build, and we do still need to be cautious. So I would say respect people's decisions and do what's right for you. That's the advice that's always been out there after all of the lockdowns, and it's the advice again. People need to do what's right for them, and other people need to respect that person's choice.
One big fallout of this whole thing is the waiting lists at the hospital, which, the UK's talking about 5 years to catch up. Are we on that same sort of path?
Thankfully, we haven't quite gone down the UK trajectory, because we have to remember the UK's had a full year of effect and impact, whereas we did actually come back out at the and we had basically around about 200 days of normality. So we did manage to catch part of it up. It's definitely an exceptionally long waiting list in some areas. Orthopaedics, for instance, which is the one I always raise, there's a huge amount of pressure there. We will see what we can do to catch up, but we have to be realistic that the help and support we normally get is from the UK, and they're in a similar situation. So it's going to take time.
And all this money we're using for supporting Logan Air particularly, but and we've got the passenger transfer and that sort of thing. Any changes likely in that? Going to the UK to get some support when needed.
Well, we have to remember we have to keep our air links. If we're going to keep the economy going, if we're going to actually be able to function as an island, we need to keep our air links and our lifelines as it is going, and that includes patient transfer. We do need to transfer people to the UK for medical treatment, and we need to ensure that those services continue. The airline industry worldwide has been one of the most impacted, and we've spoken personally before, Paul, about when you've looked at prices for going places, and they've either gone through the roof or they've gone the other way because they're trying to get people onto the airlines, and so as an industry, it's important that we do still have those lifelines going forward.
And have you got an end date for the vaccination centres as such? Once we've gone through the whole process of getting everyone vaccinated, will the airport return to normal? Will down at what was the old ShopRite building be empty again, or what?
Yeah, we hope that at some point in the future. September time was always our target, but you never know. We might be into the territory of booster vaccines by then. Technology is moving on, and I know there's now talk of boosters to combat all the variants. So we'll have to wait and see, but certainly the initial plan was it would be till September and then review.
And to finish with, are we expecting any more press conferences, or do you think we're now done until you have new news as such?
Well, I think I haven't got one in the diary for tomorrow yet, but I say this every time and then we end up doing one anyway. I'm normally the last to know. I only turn up at the podium. So I suspect possibly this week we'll stick to the Monday and Thursday regime. Might be proved wrong, as I normally am. But after that, I think maybe we will go down to once weekly, as we have in the past.